All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tellor Tech Call, January 27th, 2021. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Obviously, so this is not a community call. This is a tech call. We're going to go over course today. But as far as quick announcements go, I think since the last tech call, it went live right after the last tech call was V2.6. That looks great. So V2.6 passed unanimously. Tally made an awesome vote chart, and you guys can go see that. And the difficulty is rising. So it wasn't like 1, so basically 0, and then it had to go up. And it goes up like an order of magnitude every day. I think we're at we were at like 400 million this morning. We have to get up to like 50 trillion for it to be back to where it was.
But it was at like 3 million yesterday.
Right, but it was at like, so like it's like, it should be there like within a week. It's just how fast it's going up. So we'll get there quickly. It felt like it was moving slowly at the beginning, but now it's starting to ramp up because we got some bigger numbers in there. But mining it's looking good, should be back to normal. We're working on a whole bunch of cool stuff. We can't wait to tell you guys. Integrations, different pieces. People are really reaching out. Big news, Mike, ETH Denver starts when?
The 5th.
The 5th. So we'll have another community call before then, but make sure you guys go sign up for ETH Denver. Sign up to be a hacker, get on a team, get that ready because we want you guys there. There's a bunch of cool stuff. We just recorded an interview with them yesterday. Also, there's, what's the thing? Reimagine 2020, Reimagine 2021. Now, we did Reimagine 2020. Now Reimagine 2021 is this weekend. It's an online conference. I did a speech, or it's not a speech, it's just an interview for like an hour. I think I talked about Tellor for like 5 seconds, and then we just talked about like Bitcoin and the narratives around the space. So it was a really fun talk, but it's a cool conference. If you guys want to go listen to me talk. Anyway, so any other announcements we need to get out of the way? Okay. Digging into chorus. Okay. Now let's move to speaker view, and I'm going to share my screen. So, okay. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. Mike, you're gonna yell at me about the slideshow because I didn't. It's a nice little slideshow I put together, and did not run it by the design guys. So
it's wonderful.
It'll be good. But so this is about Chorus. So Chorus is our first vertical product. You guys can go to chorus.tellor.io. We've been pushing it around, read about it. I want to kind of tell you guys just a little bit about what it is, why we built it, why we think it's going to be kind of important and cool. So, and shout out to, if you go to chorus.tellor.io, Ben, who is our newest employee, who you guys met, I think, 2 weeks ago. Him and Mike put together chorus.tellor.io, and it's a really, really pretty website. A lot of thought kind of went into just kind of keeping it simple and the branding, which is this cool logo, which now I see looks blurry because I didn't get a properly sized image. So anyway, what's kind of the purpose of Chorus? So, a lot of people know that, okay, so we're working on Tellor. This is an Oracle project. We're sort of this middleware. So there's really, if you're thinking about it from a business perspective, where is Tellor going to go? So you have, you can do multiple things with Tellor. Then you can say, okay, we're just going to double down on the Oracle space, which is something we're still working on the Oracle space. We're not getting rid of that. But you can move into, say, just doing Web 2.0 Oracle. So this is like what Chainlink does as well. They will provide data off chain, so they'll connect Ethereum to some API, and they'll make external API calls for you, and they're trying to just be this middleware. Even if it's completely centralized, it doesn't matter. Middle AP, they used to call themselves much more than a decentralized Oracle. They were just this kind of blockchain middleware. And you can go that route if you're an Oracle. And the other way to go is sort of more of the vertical product, which is, okay, what's a product that would use Tellor? And how can we sort of get more users on top of Tellor? And that's the way that we thought would sort of bring more bang for our buck. And whenever it came down to, okay, well, what do we want to build? We talk with hackathon projects galore, people building creative things with Tellor. We were actually building a derivatives protocol before we were building Tellor, so a lot of people were thinking we would actually just go back and redo a derivatives protocol. But if you look at the space and kind of where the space is at, what do we want to build and what do we think the space kind of needs? And Chorus is where we fit. There are a lot of derivatives protocols out there. There's a whole bunch of people doing it. It's really kind of en vogue at the moment. But what we were missing, especially just doing a token based project, and what we feel like a lot of crypto is missing still is it's just kind of the ultimate purpose of, okay, so why crypto? Why is this important? And that's kind of the purpose, was how do we get back to using crypto as a currency? It was, I remember the days of trying to get people to buy things with Bitcoin, and it's a different conversation you have with people whenever it's not, oh, look at this AP, this return you can get, this APR. Whenever it's you can grow your community using crypto. You can use a currency to buy something, and the state can't tell you can't do that. It has no bank. It's just a different conversation you have with people. It's more, you can go buy this pizza online with Bitcoin and you didn't use money from a bank. Like, you can tell that to like your dad or your brother, and that was way more fun than actually telling them, oh, look, come figure out how to buy DAI and make 4% or something. Okay, so the purpose of Chorus, tangents aside, making money. Basically, we want to create non-state-backed currencies with flexible monetary policies. So the basic idea of Chorus, if you guys haven't looked it up, is it enables you to create a semi-stable coin. By semi-stable coin, what we mean is you deposit collateral, say TRB or Bitcoin or Ether or some token that backs your Chorus smart contract. And then you create these stable coins that are backed by that collateral. The reason we call them semi-stable coins, though, is that there is also an inflation rate on them. So let's say you're pegged to the US dollar, backed by Ether, so similar to like a DAI. On day one, it's kind of pegged at $1. But in a year, let's say you have a 10% inflation rate on it, it's going to be pegged at 90 cents. The reason that you would do this, and the reason that it sort of goes down in value, is that it enables you you can print new money. So similar to how a government or Federal Reserve Bank would print new money and sort of debase their currencies, it allows you as the owner to do that, because there's actually a lot of really cool things you can do with that. So if you guys haven't noticed in the space, most of these kind of yield tokens or any sort of these inflationary rewards that are really popular in DeFi, it's basically just inflationary rewards. You're not getting fee rewards with any of these things, or very, very few of them you are. Most of the times they're just sort of using mining rewards. So similar to like Bitcoin has a mining reward, that's inflation. And that's what gives it security. The fact that you're printing new Bitcoin to pay the miners to do something. The fact that you have inflation is a really good thing. What kind of we want to do is educate people how to use this, and also create a little bit more flexible. So, Bitcoin was really the V1 of kind of tokens doing this, and it's all just completely hard coded in there. Sometimes that's okay, but sometimes you might want something a little bit more flexible. Sometimes you might want a whole bunch of different things. So, okay, moving onwards. I had to kind of throw this in there because, the idea is that cryptocurrencies and whenever people create, we're calling them notes, which is, so, if you create a chorus, using chorus, you create notes. These are the stablecoins. If there's a whole bunch of different parties that are issuing notes or different currencies, a lot of times the debate is that this is actually inefficient. So some people would say that competing currencies are not a good thing. So if you saw kind of the globalized finance trend over the past few centuries, a lot of people believe like, oh, you'd have a whole lot more efficiency if you move towards one global currency. So if you had just one stable coin, or the US dollar was the only currency in town, that everything would actually be better because you could easily trade and you wouldn't have all of these exchange rate problems. And this is where the debate sets in, because some people think that the efficiency gains there would help in a lot of ways. So poor countries wouldn't have these hyperinflationary currencies, but they also wouldn't be subject to bad monetary policies. But what they sort of ignore is that currencies in general, like, they're also very powerful in how you do things. You can incentivize a lot of things. So we call this monetary sovereignty. So a country that has sovereignty over its monetary policy is, they can actually print money. They can sort of have inflation where they want. And so a good example of a country, probably the most sovereign country in the world as far as monetary policy goes, would be the US government. They can print money kind of at will. A country that has a little bit less sovereignty would be, say, like the EU. So what the European Union did is they kind of said, hey, we won't have the ability to print our own currency as a country. We're going to give that over to the ECB, or the European Central Bank. And then there's even other countries. So some smaller countries are just pegged to the US dollar. So it's almost similar to like a 1-to-1 ratio. So I think I visited the Cayman Islands once, and I know they're just pegged to the US dollar. So if you have $1, you have this many of their currency, and they don't have a monetary policy. There's no way for them to inflate things. And the good thing, so a lot of people say like, well, the old school libertarian argument is, well, you don't want a monetary policy. Like, let's go back to the gold standard. This is what a lot of times you'll hear is like, no, whenever you have a monetary policy, or whenever you give governments or somebody the ability to control your currency, they'll either use it for private profit. So, they'll just print money and give it to themselves or their buddies. And that's bad. I think crypto in a lot of ways solves this because it's a lot more transparent. And kind of historically, what it's used for is just war. So, most people, like, if you think about how war is funded, almost always it's just funded through inflation. Because if you tell people like, hey, we need to pay a bunch of soldiers to quit their jobs, and we need to go buy a bunch of military weapons. So what we're going to do is we're going to tax you all. You all have to give us some money, and then we're going to go to war. People would be really anti-war because they'd be like, no, that costs a whole lot of money. We're not going to do that. So they just print money and pay for it that way. The picture I have here, if you guys can see, this is a really old way of inflation. So it was called coin clipping. So back whenever they even had gold standard, or this was basically straight up coins that were stamped by the king. The king would come and he would hammer the coin down and shave off a little bit on the edges, and he could mint new coins with that. And slowly, sometimes you'll see old coins, they have like little like pie shaped cuts out of them, and that was coin clipping. So they would take little pieces out of every coin to make new coins, and then you get inflation that way. So the idea of having inflation is not new, but you can also think about what are the good sides. What can you use inflation for in a good way? One of the biggest ones, so there's been lots of research papers out there, if you have an inflationary currency, so one where, if you have the gold standard and that your gold should go up in value over time, you're less likely to spend it. And if you're less likely to spend it, you're less likely to kind of go out and spur your economy. So countries that have a little bit of inflation tend to have higher growth rates. That's a good thing. you can also use it for investments. So say you have a pandemic on your hands, and you don't have the cash on hand to deal with it. It would be really nice. This might be something that, hey, we as a society want to print some money to deal with this. Print some money to hand out to people so they can better stay at home. Might be a good option to have. So continuing, feel free to stop me if there are questions. Okay. So now that we're on the idea of, okay, so chorus is about we're designing a money. This I copied from somewhere. There's literally a copyright on the bottom. You can see what should a good money be. So like, how can we sort of better create a currency? The physical properties, tokens really fit all of them. So they're durable, check. Portable, check. Divisible, 1e18, check. Uniform, you can these are sort of the fungibility aspect, check. And then economic properties is really what we're going to go at. Stability of value, scarcity. Scarcity is sort of solved by the digital scarcity of them. And then acceptability, that's something that we're all going to have to work on kind of in crypto space, and then also with getting people to accept notes. But we're really going to kind of focus on that top one, which is stability of value. Okay. So the first question that should come to your mind is, okay, we're going to be using Chorus and notes as currencies. Isn't this what Bitcoin was created for? Why can't we just use Bitcoin or Tellor BRB natively? The big problem with it would be stability. So if despite the fact that people say Bitcoin is a store of value, Bitcoin is anything but a store of value. It is a speculative asset through and through, just the way it behaves, risk on, risk off. Maybe over time it will, but right now if you put Bitcoin in there and pull it out a year later, odds are it will be up, but you have no idea. It's a bad store of value. Same with Tellor attributes. Same with any of these tokens. And that's a really big problem whenever you're dealing with spending habits. So if you want to spend something, you want to know that, okay, if I accept Bitcoin as a payment, or if I accept Tellor attributes, like it's not going to be down 50% tomorrow. Like that would be a bad thing. Also in terms of pricing, how much does this cost relative to Bitcoin? Well, obviously, like you can do a lot of jump through hoops and automations to make it automatically pricing things, but let's be honest, it's a hassle, and it's one of the big reasons people don't want to spend it. The other thing, many don't really have monetary policies. So kind of like I said, having the ability to be flexible with your monetary policy is a good thing. Whenever you're talking about Bitcoin, it has a monetary policy. It prints Bitcoin and it halves every 4 years, but it's not a flexible monetary policy. Some governance tokens as well. You could theoretically use some of these things, but they don't really have the flexibility in their monetary policy. Some don't even have a monetary policy. Some, like Chainlink, for instance, just has a fixed number of tokens out there. It's never growing, and some people like that idea, but you lose a lot whenever you have that. So anyway, so now your next question should obviously be, okay, well then why not just stable coins? If we're just looking for something that's stable, let's just use DAI. Why can't we all just use DAI and then that's it? Well, the problem with DAI is that, okay, so DAI is a stable coin, but like I said, it doesn't have a monetary policy. So you could add a monetary policy to DAI, but then you're actually removing you're no longer sovereign, I guess, with your monetary policy. So if you want each project, so think about, instead of a country having its own monetary policy, you could have each project having its own monetary policy, and that should be the goal. So if right now the focus of DAI, and say like if you're using like Bitcoin's monetary policy is to support the Bitcoin protocol. And this, the idea is that if we're all spending Bitcoin and we're all using Bitcoin, and the mining rewards, that supports the security of Bitcoin. Well, what if you're a project that's not there, and your people want to spend money? What's the issue there? So what you want is actually to give the ability of different projects, and that's why you wouldn't want to just say use a DAI. Like Tellor, sure, we could just use DAI in our system, or kind of natively and tell everyone to just pay each other in DAI, but there's really no benefit to our system. There's nothing that we can do with regard to increasing the likelihood that Tellor is going to succeed whenever we're just using somebody else's stablecoin. This is kind of the idea of, a little bit piggybacking on that idea of competing currencies. So if you have a whole bunch of them, you can have some currencies that support Tellor, some that support Bitcoin, some that support, planting trees in Africa or something like that. It doesn't even have to be a crypto project. So, that would be the issue with stablecoins. And the other thing is stablecoins also, some of them are stable and they don't have any monetary policy. So if you look at like a Tether doesn't have a monetary policy. Tether is pegged to $1. Okay, so how it works. Stopping the share. Okay. Can you guys sort of see this? I know it's really dark. And this is, so Chorus, we released the Chorus white paper a few weeks ago or a week ago, something like that. It's still in draft stage, so we haven't deployed anything yet. So if you dislike any of these ideas, or you think anything could be better, definitely just let us know. We'd be happy to fix it, and have you contribute. Kind of the next steps. Yeah, so anyway, I'll leave it at that. Just tell you guys how it works. So I had already went over kind of the basics of how it works, but there's a few small variables and things that we should worry about. So the basics of how it works is somebody takes some tokens. So these are tokens. Let's call them, we'll use TRB as an example. TRB is a good one. Okay, this is an arrow. It's a big arrow. And we lock them into a smart contract. So we collateralize. We're calling them an anthem. So so Chorus is the protocol, and you create an anthem out of it. So an anthem is like the specific set of, I'm the person who created it. It has a specific set of variables. TRB is the token. The other things that you would, and all of the other variables that you would sort of set. We're going to get into. So you would lock TRB into your anthem, and then it mints you tokens. So you would set like a collateralization ratio. So say with TRB, you want this to be 100% collateralized at all times. So you need to make sure that there is at least 100% TRB in there, but 100% is actually not one that you might want to use. Like DAI, for instance, is 150%. And the reason that you want to have, say, it higher, so say like 150, has to do with the withdrawal process and handling the stability of the coins. So how Tellor, it works very similar to like a single CDP in the maker system. Whenever you lock these tokens, you get issued notes. So notes are these stable coins. Whenever you want to withdraw, so say, let's do math. So say you have 5 Tellor tokens, and each token is worth $1, and you're pegging it to the dollar. It will issue you 5 notes. Now, let's say Tellor is doing phenomenal. Tellor goes from $1 all the way up to $5. We 5x'd in a matter of a day. Now, whenever you want to withdraw, so say you have notes and you want Tellor. Now, if you have still all 5 notes, it wouldn't actually get you all 5 of these Tellor tributes. it would only get you one because you have $5 worth of notes. Now you only get one tribute whenever you're withdrawing. And the way that it figures out how do you know what the teller price is, it's really cool. We have an Oracle system that does that. So we obviously are checking the teller Oracle for the price. And then whenever you withdraw the teller notes, anybody can sort of take out the teller tributes. So the collateralization ratio, the reason that you would want a higher collateralization ratio would be if teller drops in price. So if, let's say each teller tribute is worth $10, and man, how many would you issue if you had 10 and 150% collateralization, you would issue what, 6.66 something notes that would come out of this, and there's some leftover obviously in the system, because then let's say teller dropped in price by 50%, you would still want the system to be collateralized. You wouldn't want the whole system to go under. Does that make sense to everyone? I think it should. Because yeah, so if teller would go down in price and the teller tributes, you would want all of the outstanding notes to still be able to redeem their TRB and sort of be fully back. Obviously, there's always a risk that it could go down in price more than that, and so we can talk about what would happen then. This would be like a liquidation event. The system is no longer fully collateralized. The collateral is fully depleted, and basically what you can do is you can kick off a liquidation event, and that would take the outstanding notes, divide up the remaining collateral, and pay them out. Pretty simple. We're hoping that that doesn't happen in this system. So we obviously designed it that it can happen. But there's a few caveats and things that, so we actually add a delay on that. So versus other kind of derivatives protocols, which straight up like allow you to instantly liquidate someone, like we don't think that that's kind of the purpose of this. Like you shouldn't look at this as a financial asset where it's perfectly pegged to $1 at every time, and you can easily move back and forth between TRB and notes. You can, but there's delays on withdrawals. And the reason that we added delays on the withdrawals is that we don't want you gaming the Oracle. If say the teller price dips down below the threshold, so let's say it dips down below 150%, and somebody needs to add in, and basically you're under collateralized now. What we would hope that would happen, since this is kind of created by an owning party, is they would actually just put in more teller. So they would just fund it and bring it back to good. And that's why it's sort of semi-trusted in this manner. Because, so Tellor's going to run one of these. And like whenever we have notes out there, like we're going to fund it if it goes under. If we have the TRB to fund it, it's just one of those things, like you want to keep the system alive, and the parties who are issuing these things will want to keep the parties alive. It's not one of these things where, okay, we have an open call against all of you guys. Where you guys are all short teller and we're long teller and we're betting against each other. Like that's not the way how this should feel or look. It should feel very much like we're creating these notes for people to spend with. We have a backing in place just in case, and that way it sort of keeps all parties honest. But ideally, assuming that whoever created this is not malicious, there's no reason to think that you're ever going to have to run for the exit on these. Okay. So that's the collateralization piece. I kind of talked about, like, so there's like a liquidation threshold as well. So like you want to keep it 150% collateralized, but then that allows you to mint new tokens, but then you can liquidate, say, once it hits 100% or 110%. It would be sort of different numbers. The other thing is the inflation rate. Let's say in this system we would do a 10% inflation rate. Happy we'd love at some point to we could go have like people from the Federal Reserve on and talk about ideal inflation rates for these things. It would be fun. But how the inflation rate would work, Krause's the one who actually coded up the initial chorus piece, so he can kind of give you the details on how the code actually works. But the specifics of this, so we mint new notes every year. Well, it's kind of on a rolling basis. You can, it's annualized inflation, at least the number that you put in. So let's say we lock in 5 TRB and it mints us out $100 worth of notes. So we have 100 notes in the system with 10% inflation. In 1 year, we will print 10 new notes. These 10 new notes will go to the inflation beneficiary, an address that you specify. So the owner, so the person who's allowed to deposit TRB in, is not necessarily, I mean, I guess they could be, but is not necessarily the inflation beneficiary. The inflation beneficiary is the person who receives sort of this inflationary reward, and it's super flexible. So right now it's just an address that you put it to, but you can think about the address in a very, very flexible manner. And I'm going to go over some examples of what you can do with it. But you can, create things like you could fund the team with it. You could use it as a dev share. You could fund stakers in something. You could fund a Uniswap pool. You could fund, anything. You could fund some charity that you also like. There's not really any sort of limit to what you can do with that address. And at some point, we're going to hold hackathons to come up with new creative ideas, for what this owner address is. So right now, only, if you didn't notice about the system, only one person, one address is allowed to deposit tokens in to the system. And that's to kind of prevent having to keep track of all of it. But you could have a separate contract that is the owner address that does keep track of kind of ownership of the collateral and withdrawing. Okay. I think this was a pretty good walkthrough. What am I missing, or am I forgetting anything glaring? No. Okay, everyone's silent, so I can continue. Hopefully that gives you a good idea about how it works. And now I'm just going to kind of walk you guys through some examples. Okay. These are just examples that I came up with of things that we might want to build or have other people build. The first one is super fun. It's Bitcoin with no mining rewards. So for those of you who follow crypto Twitter and the whole Bitcoin debates, the issue has come up that Bitcoin's mining reward is halving every 4 years. Eventually, it's going to, it's hard capped at 21 million, something that they're never changing no matter what they say. The problem is that Bitcoin would not be very secure if you get rid of the mining reward. Transaction fees would have to go through the roof and basically make it more unusable than it even is now. And a lot of people think that without the mining rewards, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. So what could you do? Well, you could use Chorus. So you could use TBTC or WBTC. So these are wrapped Bitcoins, which are on Ethereum. So you have Bitcoin on Ethereum, and you would put it into our Anthem contract. You could just require, full standard collateralization. But this time, you have inflationary rewards, but you give them to miners on the Bitcoin blockchain. So the miners could register their addresses, and they would be the people that would actually get paid the inflationary rewards and notes. And then you could have some sort of governance system. Say you could utilize Tellor as a fallback. So like, as I could say, true or false, did this person mine this block? And or for even passing back numbers like how much minting reward do we owe each person? It could be something even more flexible like that. But the general idea is that now the inflationary rewards would be tied to the anthem. So Bitcoin would have no inflation, but you would have inflation as far as the notes that you're spending. And then Bitcoin, and you're like, well, why would anybody use this if there's inflation in this one rather than, just sort of using Bitcoin in general? Well, Bitcoin is really expensive to spend. No one really likes spending their Bitcoin. They just hold on to it because it's so expensive to spend and there's not really good things to spend it on. Now you could say lock these notes into a side chain, and now it's free transfers. You can compete with Lightning Network. You could add a dev share in even. You would have notes that are, TBTC and WBTC are already Bitcoin on Ethereum, but now you have people call Bitcoin the digital gold. This is like a gold-backed dollar or a Bitcoin-backed dollar. This is, what the ultimate thing that you want, isn't it? You have Bitcoin backing something. So there's a whole lot of cool things that you could do with kind of a Bitcoin-backed anthem contract. So I hope that somebody builds that at some point, and we'd have to see, because I think whenever you talk to people in the Bitcoin space, they hate the idea of inflation. 21 million, is it forever? But the problem with that is whenever you talk about, okay, well, what is inflation, and who's going to be paying for the system? So inflation is actually just a tax. Inflation is a tax on everyone who holds Bitcoin. So and it's a very proportional tax. So if you have 10% inflation, there's a 10% tax on everyone who's holding that currency. Without inflation, though, to pay for security on Bitcoin, it has to be transaction fees. So now you're taxing everyone who wants to spend Bitcoin, not who wants to hold it. And if Bitcoin's main purpose is holding, store of value, they're the people that should be paying for the security of storing the value, not the people who are trying to spend it. If its main use case is spending it, it's one of those things like, well, who should be paying for it? And in my mind, who should be paying for the security is the people who are just kind of sitting there and holding it. I don't know. Okay. Example number 2. I didn't know what picture to. Okay. You could, a lot of people are saying in the Tellor community, man, I wish Tellor had staking. I feel like this is like every coin out there. I wish we had just something to throw our money at, so we could get some sort of return. How could we possibly, I don't care if the protocol support needs it. We want staking, God damn it. So yeah, you could make a staking contract with it. So let's say TRB is the party that wants staking. You could lock TRB into a governance contract. So you would have a contract that is the owner of the anthem, and it keeps track of who deposits what. And then whenever you create the notes, the inflationary rewards would go to whoever deposited the collateral. So it's basically like inflationary staking rewards. And then, the one thing that I'm super excited about, you could use like a private currency. I'm excited about using Chorus, say, as you could use it almost like a mixer for different pieces. So you could then take these notes, they're stable, so you don't mind holding on to them. There's not price risk really. So you could go lock them on some ZK rollup. You could go throw them over on Solana, where there's, you could do 1 billion transactions and mix things up, and then you could bring it back. And now all of a sudden you have a private currency that people are using. You have inflationary staking rewards, and there's something for people with Tellor to do. You can get people to spend and buy things with TRB notes, and you also can have people stake their TRB. So that one makes sense. Yeah. Blank looks. Okay. Last one. Yeah, just this was the simple one. We throw around the example of a dev share. Let's say a team that has a fixed token. So let's say you only printed 1 billion of them. That's all you have. There's no monetary policy. There's also no dev share. You had a nice hefty treasury to begin with, but now the ICO boom is over. your initial devs cashed out. So what do you do? How do you fund the protocol going forward? There's grants programs, but that's always rough. You could, if you actually have a community of people who are spending and who are moving money around, this would be a good option. You could have them lock their governance token into the smart contract. You could then create the notes and have the inflationary reward go to a DAO that governs, say, grants or a dev share to the team. And that's, it's something that some protocols are definitely missing. I know Ethereum, for instance, like luckily Ethereum is through the roof and has enough money that they don't ever have to worry about funding for quite some time. But it's a lot of projects, especially the ones created earlier on, they sort of just minted the teams a whole bunch right at the beginning, and they didn't have any sort of dev share or any sort of funding going forward for development. And you see a lot of times it dries up, and there's really no money for development. This open source for free development. It would be nice if maybe you could have a little dev share. So anyway, those were my examples. I think I'm pretty good on time. But anyway, go out there, make some anthems, make some notes. We're excited to see what you guys build. I think we can talk. So the next steps for, okay, well, what's Tellor going to do? I think you guys can obviously tell. We'll create one, maybe multiple, depending on the flexibility of it. We're still working out on kind of the final details of ours. I would love, I want to get back to having people have a way to pay for things with cryptocurrency. I want my job to be shilling normal people who aren't in DeFi to go buy things with crypto. So, once I want to create a currency that's private. I want to create a currency that is fast and cheap, and I want to back it with Tellor tokens. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on creating that, and probably sometime, over the next few months, we'll be launching that. And then we'll also be kind of reaching out to other projects who want to do similar things or need some flexibility. And then we'll be working on some hackathons to create some new kind of boilerplate contracts for people to use. So it's exciting. It's a really cool project. I'm excited about it. I know the team is as well. There's some pretty branding going on it as well. So hopefully it's not, another very pretty project that doesn't get used the space. So we're going to be sort of focusing on getting it out the door. And I know Crossy is working on a front end for kind of managing how to create it and dealing with it. And we'll walk you through that at some point as well. So questions, anything? We didn't even pass out a question form this week, so I don't think we have any questions. But if you guys do, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be around. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. That is Chorus, chorus.tellor.io. And we'll talk to you next week on the community call. See you.